The All Blacks will be announcing their lineup for the match up against the Springboks tomorrow. I've already done a prediction in terms of what Scott Robertson may select, but in this video, this is what I would like to see heading into the Eden Park Test. There is a huge amount of pressure on both of these sides, a lot of pressure on the coaches to get the selections right. It is not an easy job, and for the All Blacks with all the injuries, that job's got that little bit harder as well. But jumping straight into who I would like to see as the front row: number 1, Tamati Williams, number 2, Cody Taylor, and number 3, Fletcher Null. The All Crusaders front row, I do think would work pretty nicely here at Eden Park. You've got an injury return for Tyrell Lomax potentially in this contest, so I would keep him and De Groot together and have them as the impact duo making their way off the bench alongside Samisoni Taukei'aho. But Cody Taylor, I don't think there's a way that he doesn't start in this matchup. He has been extremely strong. Tamati Williams recently returning from injury, but has already that cohesion with the other Crusaders. And Fletcher Null, I honestly don't think he's done too much wrong. He's been scrummaging well, which could be extremely crucial when you go and head-to-head with more than likely Oxen Share. So that is the front row that I would go with if I was in charge of this side. Moving on to the locking duo. Number 4, I believe Scott Barrett is still the best choice here. Now, Tui Pelotu injured, I think, is a huge hit to the All Blacks, because he would have been either guaranteed to start or off the bench, more than likely off the bench, seeing as Barrett is the captain. But I've seen people saying maybe put Tupovai back into that locking duo alongside Fabian Holland. Josh Lord's name's been thrown in there as well, but Barrett, when he gets it right, he can be an extremely physical player to have out there on the field, and I do think that is crucial in a game up against South Africa. Partnering with him in the number 5 jersey, I would keep Fabian Holland. That man at the moment is working his way towards a Breakthrough Player of the Year nomination. As long as he can stay match fit and keep on doing well every time he puts the All Blacks kit on, he will certainly be up there and at that conversation. But his dominant tackles, his line-out steals, everything that he's been doing so far in an All Blacks kit, he's been doing extremely well. So there's no point reshuffling that. People maybe want to see him off the bench with Tupovai at 5, but I just don't know if it's worth that risk when he's been playing so well in that number 5 jersey. Moving on to the loose board trio. Speaking of Tupovai, I would play him at 6 in this matchup. I was a little bit tempted to go Wallace Satiti in that number 6 jersey, only because of what he was able to do last year. But I think the plans have changed for Satiti now. He did make his way off the bench as an impact player in the last matchup. Ardie Savea, I would keep at number 7, and that is where I would play him in the scrums as well. I know last match we did see him packing down at the back of the scrum rather than on the side, but Savea, this is the type of game that he absolutely loves. It will also, I believe, be his 100th match for the All Blacks, so the pressure will be on him, but he'll certainly be starting and will want to make a massive impact in this Eden Park Test. Number 8, Wallace Satiti. So a little bit of a reshuffle compared to what we saw last week when Simon Parker got the start. But I was looking through at Satiti's highlights from last Rugby Championship, and his work rate, his tackling as well, that physical ball running, it's just something that they will need in this matchup. I do think that a majority of those things I just listed, Simon Parker does offer pretty well. But because Wallace Satiti has just that little bit more experience at international level, as well as with a few of the other players that I've got selected here, I've decided to give him that start in the number 8 jersey. Moving on to the 9 and 10 combination. Now, this is where the injuries could heavily affect who is actually available to be selected. At the moment, Cortez Ratima, from what they've said, they're leaving it as late as physically possible to decide whether or not he will be playing in this contest. So if he is available, this is where I would actually play him in that number 9 jersey. Now, I would assume the only way they put him out there is if he is 100%. Because anything less than that, you're risking a further injury. And he's also just not going to be as elusive as we would normally see him if he didn't have that injury. So, Ratima starting 9. But if he's not available, Kyle Preston, it sounds like he might be out too. So, Finlay Christie as that backup number 9 option. And in this contest, Beauden Barrett, number 10. I know some people want to swap it for Damian McKenzie, but I do think that McKenzie's impact off the bench has been pretty strong. I just think they need to put him out there that little bit earlier. Beauden Barrett, he has had a lot of experience up against the South Africans. He's had some absolutely brilliant games up against the Boks and at Eden Park as well. In a test match like this, I feel like that's where we're going to see Beauden maybe find his next level Something that every once in a while does come out, and when it does, can become unstoppable out there on the field. Moving on to the midfield. Number 12, Jordie Barrett. I was a little bit hesitant to put that man's name down, only because the midfield combo at the moment still isn't quite working as well as the All Blacks would like. I have gone Billy Proctor, number 13. I was actually slightly tempted to stick Rieko Ioane in that 13 jersey, or maybe even Lester Whainganuku just returning into the All Blacks environment. But I do think that if they're going to persist with Jordie Barrett and Billy Proctor, the best opposition to try and do that up against is Damien Dialendi and Jesse Kriel, because that is the best midfield duo in World Rugby today. So if you can do well up against them, that would build a lot of confidence for that AB's midfield too. Jordie Barrett, his physical running is something that he will have to use a lot of throughout this game. But the problem that he had in that second test match is there wasn't too often that ball was getting shoveled on to the outside. Now, in this type of game, the box will be all over them. Rush defense right up in the face. So if they can get that ball moving that little bit more, it might be their best bet of finding a gap in that Springbok defense. Has actually missed a lot more tackles this year than we have almost ever seen in that Springboks team. So that's when you have to make the most of it. Try and find those opportunities. Break through the Bok defense. Billy Proctor, a lot of pressure on his shoulders for this matchup. But I do feel like, once again, I said it in the last game up against Argentina, and it didn't quite happen in that contest, but I'm just waiting for that really big Billy Proctor performance that secures that number 13 jersey for quite some time. He did score himself a try in the last game up against the Argentines. A nice assist from Finlay Christie too. Some good decision-making from both men. But Billy Proctor, he is praised extremely highly by those higher up in terms of the selection department, and we know how strong he can be in Super Rugby Pacific, so hopefully that conversion to international level is just around the corner. Moving on now to the back three. Now, I'm going to reiterate, this is what I would select if I was in charge. Number 11, Caleb Clarke. I know he's not available for this matchup. The comment from Scott Robertson is he wanted to see more game time for Caleb Clarke, seeing as he hadn't played in July, as well as the two matches up against Argentina. But I'll be honest, it just sounds, you know what?
Sounds like bull to me.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
No worries.
Yep. The fact that he's only played one game in the Bunnings NPC, I don't think limits the ability of Caleb Clarke here. In fact, he was one of the standouts throughout the contest that he played. He was on a losing Auckland side up against the Wellingtonians, but also still had a lot of the top stats throughout that game. And the counter argument to that is when you look through at some of the All Blacks players who did play in the NPC, Anton Leonard-Brown, Sama Penny-Finau, Caleb Clarke played better than all of them, and he's had less All Blacks minutes throughout this year. So I don't think that's a justifiable reason not to give him the chance in that number 11 jersey. Look how much they've been struggling under the high ball. That is something last year throughout the Rugby Championship that Caleb Clarke was doing extremely well. Some brilliant runs, the flat attacking ball off the back of a scrum, something that they were able to utilise last year that they don't get with Rieko Ioane. I went back and I watched that second match up against the Australians last year in the Rugby Championship. Caleb Clarke did some incredible things. He scored himself 2 tries. He was the leading try scorer of the Rugby Championship last year, yet the All Blacks aren't willing to use him in a game at Eden Park when you're defending 50 test matches in a row that you've been unbeaten. It just doesn't make sense to me. But Rieko Ioane, he's more than likely going to be starting on that left wing. I would even probably take Leroy Carter just as a little bit of an extra X factor. And like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing Ioane somewhere in this 23-man side. If he had to play 13 for the sake of getting Clarke or Carter out on the wing, I would accept that. If he was number 23 for a bit of impact off the bench, that's completely fine. But with the amount of injuries, you've got to use the best players up against the opposition that's in front of you. And I don't think the All Blacks backline have been doing that. As of yet, number 14, I went Amoni Narawa, only because I know that they'll be selecting Rieko Ioane out on the left wing, so I thought I might as well have one change in the back three, seeing as it's somewhere that the All Blacks have been struggling just a little bit more than they normally would. Now, Sevu Reece, I do actually think will start in Scott Robertson's side. He got 2 tries in the first match up against Argentina. He also, at times, didn't have a terrible game in the second match. They struggled to get the ball out to him, so once again, that could come down on the midfield a little bit, but Amoni Narawa, his defensive work throughout Super Rugby Pacific was extremely strong. He got one opportunity up against the French, didn't make the most of it, but I do still think if he was out there on the park, he could be an extremely dangerous player for this Eden Park test. And number 15, I would stick with Will Jordan. Some people are now trying to say that he shouldn't be the All Blacks fullback, but that's based off just one game up against Argentina. Every other game you see Will Jordan absolutely tearing it up. He was strong in the first match up against the Pumas. He was good up against the French, and he will be hopefully great in the games up against these Springboks as well. But that is the starting lineup, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to the bench, number 16, Samisoni Taukei'aho, number 17, Ethan de Groot, and number 18, Tyrell Lomax. Like I said, I want to keep that de Groot and Lomax combo together because more than likely that becomes the starting duo in match number 2, Samisoni Taukei'aho. He's been scoring tries for fun off the bench. The rolling maul of New Zealand working quite nicely in the later stages of a game. You've got South Africa who have conceded a few rolling maul tries, but overall it's going to be the battle of physicality late, and that is where someone like a Lomax, like a Taukei'aho, and also Ethan de Groot can really work their way into the contest. Number 19, it was mentioned earlier on that this player may not be available for selection either, and that is Sam Darry. But I do think, in my opinion, heading into this matchup, I would take Darry ahead of Josh Lord. Now, if Darry's not available, Josh Lord is probably your only option in terms of that lock and cover. But I do think what Darry's been doing throughout the NPC, since coming back from his injury, he has got that little bit stronger each game. He's a big physical unit. He's got a slightly bigger frame than Josh Lord, and I do think that that could bode extremely well for him later on in this contest when that physicality, like I mentioned, it is going to be extremely brutal out there on Eden Park, so you need your big, strong players, and Sam Darry, I believe, offers that, as well as some good work in the lineouts as well. Number 20, Simon Parker. You could have gone with Karefi, could have gone with Peter Lakai, but I do think that Parker's versatility and the fact that he plays all three, as well as playing last week, because we know that minutes matter. So number 20, I would go with Simon Parker. And this side, number 21, this is where I've got 3 names down. And honestly, he didn't go too badly in the last match up against the Argentines. If Finlay Christie is starting, then I would have Kyle Preston off the bench, although Kyle Preston may have an ankle injury, so if he's not available, that's where you pretty much have to go Xavier Rowe, because there's absolutely no other option in the halfback department. For the All Blacks now, someone also did mention that Xavier Rowe initially wasn't going to be allowed to play, but then if there's another injury, they've got no choice, unless they decide to throw a curveball and go with Leroy Carter in that number 21 jersey. Now I'm kind of tempted. Do you go with a guy who hasn't had his debut yet for the All Blacks, or do you go with a guy who hasn't had a debut yet for the All Blacks, who only just made his way into the team? You know what? I'm going to go with Leroy Carter. Xavier Rowe probably would be the better option in that department, but I just want to see Leroy Carter get a game for the All Blacks. He's the injury cover player for Caleb Clark, who is back from injury, but Leroy Carter is still a part of the squad rather than Caleb Clark, who has to wait that extra week. So this might be Leroy Carter's last chance to actually get any sort of minutes for the All Blacks. So, you know, I'm putting him 21. He's got that impact. He's got the work and the breakdown as well from that sevens background. He will put in some hard hits. Won't have to worry about defending the 50-22, which is the main critique of Leroy Carter's game. Solid with the tackles. Get him out there as the number 21. Number 22, Damian McKenzie. And I believe that late kicking in the game will be absolutely crucial for New Zealand. This one could be extremely close, so you want to make sure all of those ones are going over, and McKenzie offers you that cool, calm, collected nature off the bench in that number 22. Number 23, Lester Fainanuku. Razor said that he's available for selection here. I know originally it was going to be in November, but I believe because of the injuries that we've seen, it does bring him in. Timothy Tavatavanawai sadly not available due to an injury that he picked up in the Bunnings NPC. So I would give Fainanuku strike while the iron is hot. He's been looking sharp out there on the field for Tasman. Perhaps he could do the same for the All Blacks as well. He has also already played South Africa this year, which is something that not many players, if any, of this All Black squad can say, seeing as he was in the Barbarians team that did take on the Boks in June. But nonetheless, that is my All Black side. Like I mentioned, a lot of injury situations at the moment that can heavily influence who the All Blacks will be selecting. But 12:30 p.m. tomorrow, New Zealand time, is when the side is going to be announced. We will be doing the video on the channel as well, so be sure to check that out. We've also got the live commentary for the match. It's going to be an epic one. Eden Park, the record versus the world champs. Should be absolutely incredible. But thank you all very much for tuning in. Of course, do let me know who you would like to see in the All Blacks 23 for this matchup, and I will see you all for the next one.